Bucko, mighty Bucko, hello, and welcome. And welcome once more. A very brief book review on quite an interesting and, may I say, important book. Now, you've all probably come across 1984 and you know all about that book, but this book was written before it. It's a very interesting book. Now, as you know, for those who have followed the Marty Bucko channel, over time I've been looking at a number of dystopian movies and books and doing brief reviews on them. More and more we see this type of thing being rolled out around us. Can we learn anything? Is there anything brought to our attention from these books? Are the evil controllers actually planting these things within the books and then fulfilling them, either in part or in total? These are all questions to ask. I'm convinced personally that they do put things within these books. It is predictive programming. Now, I thank Gwen Weston for this talk, because it was she who brought to my attention the book We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. Gwen's a dear lady who's been on many of the Birmingham demos, and it's always nice to speak to her. And I thank her for her comments and making this book known to me. So basically it's set in the 26th century in a totalitarian government that rules the world. Now, as I said, it's one of the first dystopian novels. It was written in 1919. In English, it came out in 1924, but in Russian, not until 1988. Yevgeny Zamyatin was from Russia, and he had to get out of the country, and so the book was a long time coming in Russian. Like with 1984, the people in it are referred to as numbers, although in 1984 on their uniforms there would be like W. Smith for Winston Smith and then his number. But here they're just numbers. He is number D503, and he relates through 40, they're not called chapters, they're called records of his personal experience. So D503 is the one relating it all, and he is the inventor of a flying machine called the Integral. And the purpose of the machine is to take this dystopian society to other planets and subjugate other beings, if at all possible. And they do believe it's possible. So he's at work making these, this contraption. This quote from the book: "Your mission is to subjugate to the grateful yoke of reason the unknown beings who live on other planets and who are perhaps still in the primitive state of freedom. If they will not understand that we are bringing them a mathematically faultless happiness, our duty will be to force them to be happy." Now, pause a minute. You know what that reminds you of, doesn't it? Klaus the Schwabian. Any guesses from The Great Reset? You will be happy and own nothing. And of course, every citizen has all their needs taken care of. Over all these dystopian societies and tyrannies, there are the main head honcho, as it were, the main leader is known as the well-doer. Notice they make the name sound so nice, don't they? The well-doer or the benefactor. And under him are the Bureau of the Guardians. All sounds very nice, doesn't it? Yeah. And the actual, I say country, but I'm never quite sure if it is a total country or it's just a very large city. The place is called the United States, or one state, not to be confused with the United States, but maybe he's hinting at something there. And he says, I cannot imagine a city which is not surrounded by a green wall. So this city is made of glass, so they can monitor everybody. At times of certain privacy in physical relations, there are curtains allowed to be drawn at certain points, but it's glass and they can see everything that goes on. A green wall. This is written in 1919. Interesting. Why a green wall? All this talk on the warming of the globe and going green and all this. So this green wall, this is another quote from the book, is, I think, the greatest invention ever conceived. Man created to be a wild animal the day he built the first wall. Man ceased to be a wild man only on the day when the green wall was completed, when by this wall we isolated our machine-like perfect world from the irrational, ugly world of trees, birds and beasts. Now here's a question. Here is an interesting thought. We know that it's just an agenda, the whole warming of the globe malarkey, to bring in the control mechanisms of what they want to do. We know that. The question is, to what extent do they really care for the environment at all? Are they like this society that actually wants to keep out the trees, the birds, the creatures, and just have their built-up world of technology where people are cut off from that which the living God has made? And that's obvious, he's made the beauty of creation. Do they want to isolate that and take creation away from people's minds to focus on the technology and all this stuff that they control, that they have made, that they have invented? Makes you think. There were some interesting bits in it. There's a quote here that stood out to me. He says, the plaza of the cube, 66 imposing concentric circles, stands 66 rows of quiet, serene faces. I'm not going to go into what he actually meant by that. It was just the point of the numbers, the 6666 jumping out. Now, on days when the weather is so beautiful, the afternoon personal hour, there is an hour, a personal hour, where they're not totally doing everything, as it were, together, and everything is regimented for them, is usually the hour of the supplementary walk. As always, the big musical tower was playing the March of the United States with all its pipes. The numbers, which are the people, hundreds, thousands of numbers in light blue uniforms with golden badges on the chest, the state number of each one, male or female. Male or female, there didn't appear in the book to be a blurring of the sexes back then. That's good. The numbers were walking slowly, four abreast, exaltedly keeping step. Every morning, with six-wheeled precision, at the same hour, at the same minute we wake up. Millions of us at once, at the very same hour, millions like one, we begin our work. Millions like one, we finish it, united into a single body with a million hands. At the very same second, designated by the tables, we carry the spoons to our mouths. At the same second, we all go out to walk, go to the auditorium, go to the halls for exercise, and then to bed. With regards to eating, food, the globe-like heads busy chewing slowly, silently, in unison. 50, now get this, 50 is the number of the chewing movements required by the law for every piece of food. Now, you think of the stupid things that have gone on under the Rona, where people don't question, well, they do it and they know it's nonsense, but they still do it. And we could think of dozens of examples of complete madness and insanity that people have done and they get in the habit of doing without questioning anymore. And that is cultish, isn't it? That's cultish behaviour. And of course, as Nigel Watson pointed out on one of his recently, the Rona is a cult. It is. I must do something on cults, I think, in the future. The marks, the trends, how it affects the people, etc. But that's another talk. But to chew the food 50 times and to count as you do it so you get it dead right. With regards to children, there is no marriage. That wouldn't be unusual necessarily, would it, for the society in the Soviet Russia? They're not happy with the family unit. Well, they're not happy with it in our day, are they? To be honest, it's all been smashed up around us. Children, like in The Brave New World, Huxley's book, are brought up by one state, and they're referred to in the past, in the old days, as they used to be private property. In other words, the parents looked after them. And of course, even physical relations with a man and a woman within it, it has to be done on a certain day. You've got to get a certain ticket, and for whoever they're with. Usually it's the same people. He becomes infatuated with a lady called, what number was she? It was number 1330. And it's a bit like what happened in 1984. So to be original, to think for yourselves, well, it means to stand out among others, and consequently, to be original means to violate the law of equality. The news, this is just reading it, according to authentic information, traces of an organisation which still remains out of reach have again been discovered. This organisation aims at liberation from the beneficial yoke of the state. Liberation. It's remarkable how persistent human criminal instincts are. I use deliberately the word criminal, for freedom and crime are as closely related. The way to rid man of criminality is to rid him of his freedom. Now, isn't it? Yeah. And the enemies of happiness are awake. Hold to your happiness with both hands. Tomorrow all work will stop and all numbers are to come to be operated upon. Those who fail to come will be submitted to the machine of the well-doer. So, just backing up to that earlier bit, freedom. How words can be switched and changed to mean something totally different. Will we see in the days ahead freedom being labelled as something wrong and bad that must be opposed by the well-doers of the order, the new order that they want to bring in? I think so. We've seen how words have been changed in the English language to mean something different. Typical example would be something like wicked. Obviously in days past it meant something bad, something nasty, something evil even. But today it means a good thing. Wicked. So, and we've seen it with other words like, yeah, well, I won't go into all that here. So, will they switch the words to make it more and more in the days ahead something that means a bad thing? I wouldn't be surprised. And again, this society ends up operating on people. What does that mean? How are they going to change them? What do they want to do to them? And if they don't, you will be submitted to the machine of the well-doer. You'll be eliminated, in other words. There is a film of this as well on the internet, on YouTube, free of charge, about an hour and a half, something like that. A German film with subtitles. It's of interest. It's not brilliant, but it's of interest. The book itself, at times for me, was difficult to read. There were some easy flowing parts in it because of the nature of his work of building this machine. It's very technical. He's going into all manner of technical stuff all the time. I didn't find that particularly easy in reading. And there was the odd spelling mistake in the book, which things keep happening, you begin to be a bit vexed, this and that. Also, you've got to allow for the fact, the translation from Russian, and all things considered, it's an unusual and an interesting book. It's worth having a look at for those who have interest, but for the majority, it's probably not for the majority. Some would say, well, why keep bringing these things to our attention? We're beginning to live in this type of society. There may be things we can take on board and learn from. So, the book We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. And with that, be seeing you.